Hi, my name is Drew, and I'm going to be walking you through the Retro 190BH by Riverside RV. Starting right up front here, we're going to go over the loading and unloading process. Our starting position is going to be unlocking the coupler. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slide that back. That coupler is going to stay in the unlocked position for ease of use when loading and unloading. From here, what we're going to do is going to center our ball and drop underneath the coupler, and then of course lower that coupler on top of that ball. Once we are fully seated, we can go ahead and at that point run that jack all the way up into the resting position. From there, we're going to go ahead and slide this forward, locking that down, paying special attention that our vampire teeth on either side of the frame are fully engaged like so. From there, we're going to take our tow chains. We're going to cross those underneath the coupler. It is very important that we do cross them because it is state law in Texas that they not only have to be crossed, but also that they should not make contact with the pavement at any given time. Skate that line of having enough room to make your turns left or right, but not so loose that they can go ahead and potentially make contact with the pavement. So crossed and hooked onto the receiver. Right beside those, we're going to have your emergency breakaway cable. Now what your emergency breakaway cable is essentially your last line of defense. If this coupler were to fail, the tow chains were to fail, as the two vehicles separate, this is going to act like a ripcord to the electric brake system, putting full 12 volts to those electric brakes, essentially locking them up. Of course, it's an attempt to avoid a runaway trailer situation. So, very important that you have a third connection point on the receiver. So 3 points of contact, of course 2 for the tow chains, 1 for the breakaway. This is going to be your 7-way plug. This is going to plug into the corresponding receptacle on your tow vehicle's bumper. This is going to give you full function to your vehicle's charging system, braking system, tail lights, marker lights, things like that. When this is hooked up to your tow vehicle, think of it at that point as one large vehicle. For all intents and purposes, they are connected electronically. Jumping up here to your jack. Now this is an electric tongue jack. Has a light which would give you a point of reference if you are backing up to the unit at dark time. Also going to light your way here if you're doing any coupling or uncoupling after dark. Up or down operation, very easy on the jack itself. Now if we go ahead and remove this plug here, that's going to expose the manual operation of that jack. You're going to use this crank handle, of course, seat that on the drive nut there on the inside, and that will allow you to, of course, crank that up or down in an emergency power loss situation. Hopping back behind that jack, we have 2 20-pound propane cylinders. These are going to be full for you when you pick up the unit. Open and close valve on the top, very straightforward, separated in between with a propane regulator. We're of course going to directionalize this to the tank we wish to draw off of. If we have both of these valves open, once we finish up on that primary tank, it's going to automatically switch over to the secondary tank here. Removing these tanks for service is very easy. You're going to unscrew this oversized wing nut, rotate the T-bar out of the way, of course disconnect the pigtails. Go ahead and muscle those out, take them to either get exchanged or filled. So very straightforward stuff there. Brand new Interstate D-cycle battery back behind that. That is a Group 24 lead acid battery. So what that means is it is going to carry some maintenance. What that will entail for you is 2 or 3 times a year we're going to remove these vent panels. We are going to refill with distilled water as necessary. So there's a clear marked water level. We just need to maintain that water level. Since the unit does not have a built-in battery disconnect switch, would not be a bad idea to go ahead and disconnect these battery terminals to isolate that battery for periods of long-term storage. Any 12-volt system is going to have nominal or phantom draws within that system. Generally, from the day-to-day, that's no big deal. When in storage, compounded over many weeks in storage, they can wear and tear on the battery, so it is best suited to be disconnected. Light here is going to be helpful to light all of these components after dark. Switch to turn that on and off is of course right underneath the fixture. And again, this is all covered, or your propane tanks I should say, are covered by this white cover here. This just slips over top of those tanks. Paying special attention that these black latches are facing towards the camper. So that's going to keep that door from catching wind and potentially blowing off. Moving on here to the passenger side of the unit, we have your stabilizer jacks here on all four corners. Now these are for stabilization, they're not for leveling. So what that means is we're going to level front to back using the main tongue jack. We're going to level left to right using the tires and what's called a leveling kit. Once we are certain of our level, we're then going to go ahead and run these down. So you're going to use the 3/4 inch drive nut on the jack, the corresponding crank handle, and again, we're going to come down, make contact with the pavement, maybe a quarter turn more just to shore everything up. Same on the way up. These will certainly last a lot longer if you get in the habit of using a light touch when you are operating them. Again, there is no real need to kind of muscle them into position. Storage compartment here, large storage compartment, is accessible not only from the inside but from both the passenger and the driver side. The lights you'll see in this storage compartment have a center button. If you tap that center button on the lens, that's going to turn those lights on and off. It's very straightforward stuff. Coming down here, we have your freshwater connection. If you're going off grid, taking your water with you, filling the onboard water tank, this is what you're going to use. You're going to stick your drinking water hose directly in there, fill it up till it overflows. Once we are full, we cap it off. You do need to use the onboard 12-volt water pump to go ahead and pressurize that system, draw that water up to the fixtures and make it usable. Down below that, we have your city water connection. Now, city water is pressurized directly from the line. More often than not, it is over pressurized. So what that means for you is we always want to use a water pressure regulator. We include one with your purchase that's going to regulate that pressure in between 40 and 50 psi. Although these units are designed to have a working water pressure up to 75 psi, feel free to increase that water pressure if you'd like, just making sure you're not exceeding that 75 psi. They do offer adjustable water pressure regulators or high flow water pressure regulators. Again, feel free to use those if you'd like, as long as we're not exceeding that limit. Any water pressure regulator is going to hook directly onto the water source. We're then going to hook our hose onto that, so something like that. And then lastly, our trailer connection is going to be made by rotating that connection there. So very straightforward stuff. Right up above that, we have your 30 amp 110 volt power supply here. Now this plug is only going to plug into the camper one way. You have one L-shaped receptacle there. If we line that up, of course, with the corresponding plug there, we go ahead and plug it in, give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right, that locks it in. Then we do have a secondary collar here we can screw down, lock it in further, keep somebody from potentially tripping over it, something like that. We also include a 30 to 15 amp reducer with the unit. That's helpful if you want to check the function of some things before going down the road. You want to run some low draw appliances, feel free to do so on that 15 amp service. If you plan on running the air conditioner really for any amount of time, it's going to be my recommendations to upgrade from this reducer to a dog bone style reducer, which is going to accomplish the same thing. It is separated by about 12 inches worth of cord, which is going to dissipate heat a lot better, going to be a lot better for the appliance. Also, a very big recommendation I make for every single unit that I do deliver is going to be the addition of a 30 amp surge protector. It is really the #1 thing you can do to protect your investment. You have a lot of things going on within the unit electronically, a lot of sensitive electronics. That surge protection or surge protector is really the only thing you can do to protect the unit from substandard wiring, surges, dirty power, things like that, things that you may encounter in an RV park. A 30 amp surge protector is what you're going to need to protect yourself from that. If you do have any questions on which products that we recommend or how to use those products, feel free to give our parts department a call. They'd be more than happy to go ahead and educate you on the importance and what products to use. We have your tires and lug nuts here. Lug nuts are going to be torqued to 100 foot-pounds. That is the manufacturer's recommendation. We have torqued those down here in the shop. Every manufacturer recommends a retorque procedure the first 15, 25, 50, and 100 miles of initial travel. It is very important that we do go ahead and retorque those down or make sure they are maintaining that 100 foot-pounds of torque. Manufacturer further recommends that at the start of each trip thereon after, we do go ahead and retorque those down to 100 foot-pounds or check that torque. So if you don't have a torque wrench, not a bad time to buy. You will use it as long as you are following those manufacturer's recommendations. Also, tire pressure is going to be stamped in the sidewall of the tire, that more traditional location. Just FYI, all trailer tires are ran at the max tire pressure rating. I believe for this unit that's 60 PSI. We can confirm that by coming up here to the data tag, and it's actually 65 PSI. So 65 PSI is the max tire pressure rating. That's exactly where we're going to want to run these tires. Coming down, we have your solar plug here. Now that is just a direct connection to the battery. What that does is that it allows you to utilize a portable solar panel, whether that be a briefcase panel or just a small panel. Essentially turns this into a plug and play connection to the battery. So what you do, you plug in here, take your solar panel out to the sun, directionalize it as necessary. That panel is going to intake energy as necessary. Once your battery bank is topped off, it's going to be careful not to overcharge them. So very smart system, very easy to use, a very popular option. We have cable satellite inlets here. Now this is just a standard RG6 cable fitting that passes through to the designated TV areas of the camper. You can use that to feed a park cable service or an aftermarket satellite package from the exterior of the unit to the TVs on the interior. It's just, again, a pass-through cable connection. Down low here, we have your dump valves. We have black for black water, gray for gray water. Black water is going to be anything that comes from the toilet. Gray water is going to be anything that comes from the sink or the shower. Very important that you operate these correctly. What that's going to look like for you is keeping this black water tank or black water valve in the closed position. We're going to use the onboard monitor panel to monitor that level, and we are only going to dump as necessary. It's very important that we keep that in as wet or flowing condition as we can. That's going to allow that toilet paper and that body waste to easily evacuate the tank, and that's exactly what we're looking for. These two valves should never be opened at the same time. Kind of treat it like a vacuum lock. Make sure that you're avoiding any cross-contamination issues or any backfeeding issues, something like that. A popular option is going to be when it does come to dump, you of course dump your black water valve first. You allow that tank to evacuate completely. You then close it off, and then we go ahead and we pull that gray water valve. What that's going to allow you to do is rinse the shared plumbing between the two tanks as well as your sewage hose on the way out. In between there, we have a bayonet style fitting. That is a very standard RV septic fitting. You're going to have prongs along the outside of that piping. What we're going to do is we're going to line our keyholes here of the sewage hose up in the halfway position, give it a 1/4 inch turn. That's going to go ahead and lock it on and allow us to be ready for service. Again, just to clarify, even when we are hooked up to full-time septic using this hose, that black valve needs to be in the closed position. Also, right up here further back, right here where my hands are going to be the low point drains. Now these are the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. That is everything in between water source and fixture will be drained here. They just have a couple plugs on them. That goes for just good general maintenance and winterization. So the manufacturer recommends that anytime the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, we do go ahead and drain the unit completely. This is going to be stop number 1 to do so. We're also going to drain the water heater separate. Again, making sure that we do not store any water within the unit if it is going to be in storage for more than 7 days. And then we have your rear stabilizer jack. We'll have these, of course, on the passenger side as well. Moving on here to the rear of the unit. Not too terribly much going on back here. We, of course, have your tube storage bumper. That's helpful if you want to store your sewage hose in that location. It does have a plug on each side. We, of course, have your tail lights, marker lights, things like that. You have this storage compartment here, which is a very efficient use of space here on the rear. All of these compartments are going to utilize this clip style hold open. They work very well. You do see them get damaged because magnetic hold opens are so common these days. People just want to just grab a hold of this and just yank on it to shut it. Of course, that's going to go ahead and damage that clip. So make sure that when you do go to close it, you are manually disengaging that and allowing that to come down. Outside shower here, access to hot and cold water. You know, not going to spend too much time on it. It's nothing too crazy. That whole sprayer and nozzle wrap around the fixture there. Of course, storing all in that same compartment. So very simple there. We have a black tank flush here. Now this is an excellent appliance. Works really well. It corresponds with a jet inside the black water tank. What that does is that allows you to rinse the internals of that tank. It does have its limitations though. So if you were to leave water rushing in here indefinitely, it's going to overflow that tank. Of course, we want to avoid that. When you do overflow that tank, it actually comes out the rooftop septic vent. So that is something we, of course, want to avoid at all costs. When utilizing this, if you have that black tank and that black tank valve in the closed position, which is going to give you the best rinsing action, make sure you're running inside to check that level as that water runs into it, into the tank. Once that tank reaches 2/3 full, run back out here and go ahead and open that black water valve, making sure that you are rinsing that tank properly. If you think it might be something that you forget, just go ahead and leave that black water valve in the open position. Of course, the likelihood of you overflowing the tank at that point is significantly reduced. All right, so what we have here is your spare tire here on the rear. When it does come to changing a tire, you want to go ahead and place your jack directly on the axle as close to the tire as you can without it interfering in your work. One point to bring up is the unit does not come with a jack or a lug wrench. So I encourage you to check and make sure your tow vehicle's jack is going to assist you in changing a tire, as well as that lug wrench is going to go ahead and fit these lugs. So a couple things to remember there. Coming around here to the passenger side of the unit, we have your 6-gallon capacity water heater here. Now this is a dual source water heater. It's going to run not only on a 110 volt heating element, but also a propane with a 12 volt direct spark ignition. Now from a maintenance standpoint, it is very important that we drain the water heater if it's going to be in storage for more than 7 days. And of course we prime it or fill it before utilizing it. So what that's going to entail for you, it's very important that we follow the right steps and to do so from a safety standpoint. You could actually hurt yourself if you do this improperly. So what you're going to do is you're going to give it ample time to cool down, number one, at least 2 or 3 hours once you're fairly certain of the temperature, where it's very important that we depressurize it. So to depressurize it, we're going to use the any fixture within the unit, whether that's the bathroom, the kitchen, the outside shower. We're going to turn the hot side of any fixture on. Of course, before doing that, it's important that we cut the inflow of water to the unit. So if we're running the city water connection, we're going to physically turn off the spigot there at the water source. If we're using the 12 volt water pump, we're going to turn that switch off. So with no new water coming into the unit, we're then going to find the closest internal fixture or just any water fixture within the unit, and then we're going to turn the hot side of that fixture on. It's going to relieve the pressure right there at the fixture. Once you cease to see water coming from that fixture, you have been depressurized here. You can then go ahead and finish the draining procedure. From there, you're going to take an 1 1/16 ratchet and extension, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to back that drain plug out. Once that drain plug is removed, you're going to have another 4 to 5 gallons of water evacuating the tank from this location. Now this is not only your drain plug, but it is also your anode rod. Looks like a 12-inch by 3/4 inch piece of magnesium. What that does is acts like a magnet for hard water deposits, calcification, things like that. They deposit on the end of that anode rod as opposed to the inside of the water heater. They eat away at that. It is a consumable part though, so expect to get a year or two or a camping season or two in between anode rod changes. Also, when it comes to priming the water heater or filling it back up, it's going to be a very similar process, although we're going to introduce a flow of water into the unit. So if we're again talking about city water connection, we're going to turn on the water source. If we're talking about potable water, we're going to turn on the water pump. Once we have water flowing within the unit itself, we're then going to go back to that hot side of the spigot. We're going to turn that on. That flow is initially going to be very airy, spitty. What it's doing is it's displacing the air within the unit and replacing it with water. So once that flow normalizes at the fixture, that is our indicator that we have 6 gallons of water within the unit. We can go ahead and use it to heat water. When it does come to actually choosing a source to heat the water, they do separate those sources. So what we have on the unit itself is going to be a toggle switch underneath the regulator here. What that's going to do is again just a on-off toggle switch. That's going to be for the electric 110 volt heating element. The propane switch is going to be found on the inside of the unit, and that's what we're going to discuss when we do make our way into the unit. Now, one word of caution is that I've find that people often do is they forget to go ahead and turn this switch off when they are done using it. So make sure that once we are finished camping, we're finished heating water, we go ahead and turn that off. Of course, we want to avoid any dry fire scenarios like that. Also here on the cover, we have some louvers and some grating. Mud daubers, flying insects, those are attracted to the smell of propane. What they do with these propane burning appliances is they crawl as deep within the appliance as they can. They make their dirt nest, again, as deep within the appliance as they can, generally leaving it inoperable. What we want to do is avoid the likelihood of them nesting within the appliance. Again, the only real way to do that is going to be screening these off. So that's going to be our recommendation. They do sell aftermarket bug screens specifically cut for each one of these appliances. That's what you're, of course, going to want to use to go ahead and make sure they're not getting in. We have your cooktop here. This is an excellent cooktop. The lid stores upside down here, so when we do want to use it, we're going to flip the griddle up top here, and that would, of course, then just sit sit like that. Now, when it comes to lighting it, the griddle will be removed, and what we're going to do is we're going to visually inspect this, and this on-off or this temperature control here. If you were to start in that off position there, if you push it in and then rotate it there to the left, that actually activates the sparker. So you may have to do that a couple times, but eventually it will light. Once you see the flame here, you can then, of course, go ahead and replace this griddle, or if you're going down the road, you're going to go ahead and put that on like so. And this all slides back in and stores within that compartment. Now what we have here on the rear of the unit is going to be the male fitting for a quick connect or quick disconnect. Within the unit, we're going to find the corresponding gas hose for that. Of course, you would make your connection here, and then we're going to take that hose down, and it looks like it's actually towards the rear here. So right here is going to be the other, the female version of that fitting, which is a quick connect with the collar here. Slide that locking collar back, insert the male end fully. That's going to go ahead and snap back, and then you have a valve here. If you go ahead and push that valve in line, that gas is going to start flowing from there. You cannot either connect or disconnect with that valve in the on position, so that's a safety feature there. Oh, and this is actually the gas hose, so I didn't see this sitting here initially. This is what you're going to use to make that connection. So, very straightforward stuff. Moving on here, we have your furnace. Now this is a propane burning appliance with a 12 volt direct spark ignition as well. Again, very, very important that we do not restrict the flow of this appliance. Being in this area, I could see maybe like a lawn chair or something being placed in front of it. It does blow very hot air when it is on. It's very important, again, that we do not restrict that flow and that we do protect it from the intrusion of mud daubers and flying insects, things like that. So make sure we go ahead and screen this off. Right above that, we have a couple 15 amp 110 volt outlets. Again, nothing too crazy there. Your hood vent here for the stovetop. It's very important that we open that before cooking a meal and that we close it when we're done. It is very easy to do so. You just go ahead and lift the tabs to either open or close it. Also, we have your awning, speakers, things like that. We'll get to the operation of those when we do make our way onto the inside. Steps are going to be up and in. Again, nothing too out of the realm there. Very straightforward stuff. Other side of our storage compartment here, so we did see this. You know, again, other than having that same light that we already talked about, not really too terribly much we need to focus on within this compartment. And I believe that really just about covers it here for the exterior of the Retro. We're going to go ahead and hop on the inside and take a look at those features. Awesome. So here on the interior of the unit, we have your fire extinguisher here. This is, of course, a very important part of your safety equipment. We do test our safety equipment every single time we take the unit out. So what you're going to do for this is push that green test tab down. If it springs back, that means there's pressure within the unit. It's okay to use, safe to use. If that green tab were to stay depressed, that means the unit is no longer pressurized. We need to go ahead and throw that unit out or exchange it. You also have a countertop extender here. This is going to utilize these spring clips here. So what you do is you lift those up into that set position. That will, of course, allow you to use that. And then when you're done, we just go ahead and fold them back down. Hopping up here to your convenience center, fair amount going on here. This is going to be your tank monitor location. This is going to give you a real-time readout of where the level of your tanks and as well as your batteries sit. The more lights you see here on this display, the fuller that whatever you're testing is. Battery is full. Battery is going to read full anytime you're plugged into shore power like we are. To get a true readout of where your battery sits, you are going to need to unplug and then go ahead and test from this location. Fresh water is going to be full. That's how we pressurize these systems. We make sure there's no leaks. Is going to be done with that fresh water or that fresh water holding tank and water pump. Black water is going to be empty as it should be. Gray water is empty as it should be. And this is a pretty generic panel, so some of these floor pans lend themselves to having a secondary gray tank. However, this is not one of those floor plans, so just go ahead and disregard that galley indicator there. And then we have your light switches here. One of these is going to be for the outside awning lights, and you may be able to see that reflecting off my hand. That's going to be that LED light strip we saw on the base of the awning. And then we have this ceiling light switch here, and that's going to, of course, take care of most of the overhead ceiling lights. But all of those lights do have a switch right there on the lens. You can control which ones come on and off with that main switch. We have your awning extend and retract button here. That's, of course, you know, a momentary switch. We can choose how far we want to go ahead and run that awning in and out. One word about the awning, always make sure that your fabric is on top of the awning, the roller. That is how it should be. If it is on the bottom of that roller, that means at some point you have rolled it in backwards. So keep that in mind. Beside that, we have your water pump and your water heater switch. These are both on lighted switches, so you know they are on. This water heater switch, this fault light is going to come on with that switch. Generally, that is our indicator, on whether or not the water heater has lit or not. It generally will cycle 3 times. If it does not light by the end of that 3rd cycle, it stops trying and it illuminates this fault light. In the event that that happens, it happens generally for a couple reasons. Sometimes you're out of gas, sometimes you don't have the valve in the on position, or sometimes, just hasn't made its way, the gas hasn't made its way through the line to the appliance. Either way, in the event that that happens, go make sure you have gas in the tank, make sure the valve's on. If you have both of those things, just go ahead and turn the switch off, turn it back on. It will then go ahead and generally light on the first try of the second cycle. It's very straightforward. Here, turning around here, we have the your closet space here. You have a hanging rack or hanging rod there for your closet space, and of course some storage. TV is going to be on a pressure or friction TV mount where you'll make sure that this is seated here into the keeper. That's going to keep it from rattling loose going down the road. Once we go ahead and pull that out, we can go ahead and directionalize that TV throughout the camper. Behind that TV, we have your antenna booster plate. On the roof of this antenna, we're going to find an omnidirectional digital over-the-air television antenna. We power that on from this location. So we make sure that green light's on. We then do a channel search that's going to bring in the best programming due to our signal. So it's going to seek out your best signal. For utilizing the part cable service or aftermarket satellite package through the RG6 cable fitting we saw in the exterior of the camper, we want to make sure that this green light is off. That way that signal can go ahead and bleed through. Down here on the underside of the TV, we have a couple 110 volt outlets as well as a couple USB for charging. So again, nothing too crazy there. We have this access door. This is going to give us access to that storage compartment to access any gear that we have stored there. Over here we have our fire exit. If you're particularly motivated enough and your entry door is blocked, you can go ahead and yank that screen out of the way and then of course exit through that window. Very easy to do so. You're going to go ahead and use this handle here, and that's going to push out. Of course, you can leave it in that out position. That's going to give you function of it as a normal window to feed fresh air to the unit. If we're going to operate it like an emergency exit, it's going to come fully open like a doggy door. And then, of course, when you're closing it, we just want to make sure it's latched. Now, all the shades within the unit are going to be these pull-down friction shades, so you do just go ahead and pull those down. That's going to be your privacy option there. Dinette here is going to make a secondary sleeping area. It's very easy to do. What you do is you're going to separate this into three pieces. You separate your tabletop, so you go ahead and you loosen that up. The pedestals may come, the poles may come with it. Ideally, they're going to stick in the flange on the floor. From there, again, you're going to separate the pole from the flange on the floor. You're going to break this all down into separate pieces. Once you have everything separated, you're then going to take that tabletop and you're going to lay him right here on these ledges. That's going to support the tabletop. You're then going to take these two rear cushions, lay them over top of that tabletop to fill out the mattress, of course. This size would be helpful for a small adult or a large child, whatever. It is just a secondary secondary sleeping area. Windows here, so the rest of the windows other than the emergency exit window are going to be very similar to this one we have here. You'll have a locking tab there. If you unlock that tab, that'll allow you to go ahead and slide that open. So very straightforward stuff. Lights here on the underside of the cabinets are just going to have the switches right there on the lenses. Of course, you have storage here above that. We have your drive unit here. This is going to be your multimedia center. It has multiple inlets, HDMI inlet, USB inlet, a couple 3.5 millimeter jacks, access to AM/FM radio. Also, you have, it's Bluetooth, things like that. You do have two separate zones for speakers. So you have one inside zone and one external zone. We saw those speakers there on the outside. You're going to control the volume here on this unit. One thing I neglected to talk about here in the bedroom area is going to be your smoke alarm. Now that's a regular standard 9-volt smoke alarm. It'll let you know when it needs to be changed to to avoid having that keep you up in the middle of the night, keep a spare battery with you, you know, in the event that it needs to be changed or runs dead on the road. Coming here into the kitchen area, we have your cooktop. Very straightforward stuff here. You have a igniter. Excuse me. We have an igniter here that's going to go ahead and light the burner, so you'll turn it to high. Go ahead and rotate that clockwise, and that will go ahead and light the burner. We're also going to use that to light the pilot for the oven. What you do is you turn it from the off position to that flame. You're going to go ahead and hold that in while igniting it here. If we go ahead and open up the oven, what we're looking for is we're looking for our pilot light right there next to the igniter. This always is kind of tough to show up on film, but once we see that pilot light there on the unit, we're then going to take this and we're going to rotate this to our temperature. Of course, you should have pretty standard temperature there on the knob. This light, of course, this button here not only gives you these blue lights, but it also gives you that oven light to allow you to see what you're doing. Below that, we have your blower motor. That's going to be the location of your furnace. That's where all of your heat is going to come from within the unit, and that is controlled by the thermostat over here on the wall. What you have here is a slider. If we go ahead and turn that on, that's going to kick that blower motor on immediately. 16 seconds after that, it actually ignites. By the 30-second mark, it's producing noticeable heat. Generally, in a unit of this size, it is not uncommon for it to also set off the smoke alarm. Manufacturer, that is well within the manufacturer specs. If that does happen, of course, don't be alarmed as long as it is within that first 15 minutes of operation. Refrigerator shutoff is on and off there. That's how we're going to turn this refrigerator on. Now, this is a very cool refrigerator. It works really well. It is a 12-volt compressor fridge, so it runs very efficiently, and it allows you to have, it allows itself to be used whether you're going down the road, whether you're boondocking. You should have access to 12-volt power, and this is going to be helpful. Temperature control is going to be right on the inside panel here. You have 1 through 5. We also have temperature control for the freezer on that knob there, so very, very straightforward. Stuff we didn't talk about here in the kitchen is we have a standard run-of-the-mill microwave, hood lights, things like that. That's all pretty standard stuff. We're not going to spend too much time with that. Leading us back here into the bunk area. Again, really not too terribly much we need to speak of. Same lights that we've seen throughout the camper, plugs on each bunk, and then we do have a secondary emergency exit there on that rear bunk, or on that bottom bunk. That's going to operate the very same way as the emergency exit we saw initially. Down low here on the floor, we have your carbon monoxide LP leak detector. That is also, again, a very important piece of safety equipment. We're going to want to test that every time we take the unit out. That is wired into the 12-volt section of the camper. So what that means is there's no battery to change, anything like that. Above my head, we have the air conditioner. Before we hop there into the restroom, we have your air conditioner controls. What you have here is you have 2 fan speeds, low and high, and then we have 2 low and high air conditioner fan speeds as well. So low cool, high cool, low fan, high fan. We have your thermostat, so we can dial that down or dial that in within the setting. And then we have filters here on each side. These are going to be removable, reusable filters. We're going to go ahead and pull these out, rinse them in the sink as necessary, go ahead and let them dry before replacing them within the area here. Coming here into the bathroom, go ahead and turn that off so I'm not talking over it. Here in the bathroom, nothing too crazy. In the shower, we have a tub style, bathtub style floor, but we also have the diverter here on the fixture that's going to divert the water up here to be used like a traditional shower. Most RV sprayers have a on and off on the fixture. It's going to allow you to conserve any hot water or overall water consumption. You'll probably find yourself doing military Navy style showers. Down here on the toilet is going to be a pedal style toilet. It will be a light press to fill up the bowl, a full press to flush. Always want to use the proper toilet paper and chemicals, a single ply RV grade toilet paper, as well as a deodorizing product, and also a tissue dissolver. Generally with those deodorizing products, all of those products I should say, you're going to introduce to the system here from the toilet. Generally you will put the product in, you'll chase it with a certain amount of water. Once you are satisfied, you're going to let it sit there. Of course, you're going to go on with your camping trip until you dump. You're going to repeat as necessary. Now, when you're storing the unit, keep it full of chemical. That's going to help break down any compounding of the waste within the tank while it's just sitting still. So keep in mind. Other than that, we have an exhaust fan here. Make sure we're closing this before going down the road. You do that by rotating this lever here, and then we do have an on-off fan, on-off switch for that exhaust fan. You know, hot and cold here at the fixture. Looks like we have some air in the lines, but this is all pretty kind of standard stuff. Resettable GFI outlet here. That's important to note that all the receptacles within the unit are on the same circuit. If one of them were to get overloaded, they kind of all follow suit. This is going to be that reset point to restore function to those outlets. So keep in mind. That just about covers it here on the interior of the unit. Let me take a quick look, make sure I didn't miss anything. And it looks like I did miss your fuse panel breaker box down low here. What we see here is we have everything there on the right side of that unit is going to be an automotive blade style fuse. Everything on the left side is going to be your 110 volt resettable breakers. What that means is these are going to be replaceable, so you're going to want to pick a variety pack of fuses, keep them with the unit. These are going to be resettable very much like in your fuse panel breaker box at home. In terms of function, everything should be clearly marked here on each side, so pretty straightforward stuff. Now I believe that does conclude the interior features of the unit. We hope you enjoyed the walkthrough. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you.